Hello, I'm just going to use this short video to explore the differences between methods and methodology, which is a really important distinction in your research methodologies module. So I'm using this analogy of an iceberg to try to explain it. And methods, I guess you could say, is the stuff that's above the waterline, if you like, the stuff that you can really obviously see. So methods that you could use in your research might include an interview or a focus group, or you might do a questionnaire, or you might do a set of observations. So methods fairly straightforward. What's less clear and what's not immediately visible and kind of below the waterline, if you like, is the thinking that underpins those methods, the logic and assumptions that you're using to make those decisions. So why is it that you think observation is going to tell you the truth about this situation? What is it about interviews that are really going to help you to get to what really happened? So the methodology means those two things together, the methods that you've chosen and the thinking underneath it. And it's really important that you make all of that clear in your assignments for research methodologies and also for your major study. So the first good question is, why is it important to explain that thinking, those logic and assumptions? Imagine you're reading a research paper, tells you that they're using interviews and observations, doesn't tell you what the thinking is that underpins those choices. Why is that important? Why is that a problem? So I hope we get a chance to talk about that in the first day school. Second really good question is, where can we get help with that task? So this is not easy stuff and you're going to find it quite difficult to do that. One of the sources of help is that in the first day school, we're going to play a game, and I think you can do some preparation for that to get more out of it. So I'm just going to briefly, using this quick diagram, explain what the nature of that game is. So what you've got is 4 sets of cards. On the green cards, you've got different methodologies. On the red cards, you've got some pretend research question. The blue cards are methods, and I think they're yellow actually, but on this diagram they're pink, are sampling strategies. So who you're going to ask and how many people you're going to ask and so on. And what we're going to try and do during the day school is that each of you will get just one card, a green one, a blue one, a red one or a pink one. And then we're going to try and match people up into groups. So we're going to try and look at a research question and choose which methodology fits best with that research question. And once that choice is made, you'll then start to think about, well, which methods are congruent with or match those methodologies and that question, and who am I going to ask, how many people, how am I going to select them? And so what the game tries to do is to get you making methodological choices as a kind of practice for when you do your actual study. So really important thing, my cat's scratching the chair, hang on, stop it Lily. Excuse me. So one of the really important things here is trying to devise your own research question. And if we get chance, if you've brought some of your own ideas along to the session, then we might be able to play the game with your actual questions in instead of the pretend ones that I've created. And that would be a great opportunity for you to try out some of these ideas and test run them and talk about them in the session. So that's going to help you to start to think about what methodology you want to choose. So basically what we'll end up with is we're going to say, right, methodology A goes with the 4th research question, and to answer that question we're going to use methods 1, 5 and 9, and we're going to sample these people in this way. And then we'll have another group who've gathered together in this combination, and we'll hear a pitch from each of these different groups. Why is it that we've put these things together? What's the thinking behind that? And that's the nature of the game. So I think that's going to be really helpful. And as I say, to get ready for that, have a look at these cards, start to think about what might match up, what combinations might work. And there's no one right answer. This is one of the other challenges of this module. There's no one way of doing anything, so there's lots and lots of different correct answers that are perfectly acceptable. There are some wrong answers, things that don't go together, that are an inappropriate methodology for a particular research question, or methods that aren't going to help you to answer that question using that methodology. So there are some wrong ones, but there's no single correct one, and this is what this activity is going to give us a chance to do, is to practice some of that in a low stakes and kind of fun environment. At least I hope it'll be fun. So the other source of help, so that my question originally was, where can we get help with this? So one source of help will be the game. Another really important source of help is the literature. And you'll start to see different kinds of logic and assumptions that underpin different methodologies when you begin to read that literature. And so I'm going to just kind of highlight 3 ways of looking at the world. And there are more than this. But I want you to, when you're reading about the different methodologies, maybe start to see if you can spot some of these, and also think about which one suits you. So these are meant to represent people. This is an event that we're going to do some research into. So the BA Education Professional Development class on the 9th of September 2017 in Lochside at the University of Huddersfield on the 2nd floor, room 16. Don't think that's where a class actually is, so don't get mixed up. But let's say, for the sake of argument, that it's this event that we're going to do some research into. So the first way of looking at that is to say that that session is a real thing that has a concrete existence in the external world. And if we assume that's true, then we can ask the question, what really happened in that session? Now, an alternative way of looking at it is to say that actually it doesn't exist anywhere other than in the minds of the people who were there. So our research question then changes slightly to, what do people think happened? And actually these might be quite different. So if we got the tutor compared with the student, they might have some similarities between what they think happened, but there might also be some subtle differences. There might be some quite radical differences between what they think occurred in that session. So if you think this is true, it's a very different kind of research than if you think this is true. Another way of looking at it is to say, what do people say happened and why do they say that? So again, there might be subtle differences, radical differences between what different people say about that session. So for example, if we look at the tutor, what they say happened might not match what they think happened. It might kind of match it, but again, there might be subtle differences between what they think and what they say, or quite radical differences between what they think and what they say. And this kind of research is interested in those motivations. So for example, the tutor says it was a fabulous session, but what they actually think is that, well, some of it was okay, but there were some disasters. Why are they saying something different from what they think? And that's a very different kind of research from this. So you can begin to think about your own research question and ask those sorts of things about it. And the sorts of different methodologies that this might fit with. Broadly, we might say, people who think that there's a real concrete event, social event that we can find the truth about, would tend to choose a scientific approach. So that would be a science type methodology if you were asking those kinds of questions. But interestingly, if you were choosing phenomenology as your methodology, what phenomenology asks the researcher to do is to bracket or set aside their skepticism about the real world and assume that something really happened, and then try and get as close as they possibly can to the truth of what happened. So it is interested in what people think about the session, but it's trying to get at the truth through that. So what is this phenomenon? What actually happened in that phenomenon? A way of getting to it is through what people think, and also in part what people say. But I'm using phenomenology to do it because I want to acknowledge the importance of the event in people's minds. This kind of approach, what do people say about it, is a narrative approach, and some narrative studies are really wholly concerned with what people say and the importance of that. Some kind of are at this boundary between what people say and what people think. And so there is scope when you're writing about your methodology to say, I'm doing the kind of narrative study that's most interested in what purposes people are trying to achieve through what they say. Or you might say, I'm doing the kind of narrative that is really interested in what people say and the differences between what they say and what they think, but I'm also interested in trying to get to the truth of what they think. And so in doing it in this way, I'm trying to show that actually these boundaries are slippery and that can move around a little bit. And it's your choice to say which kind of study you're doing. You get to decide all of this. You back it up with the literature, you become familiar with these terms and the different ways of seeing them, and you use those ideas to tell us the truth about this stuff. So just to return to where we began, to really start to dig into this. It's really interesting stuff, difficult stuff, challenging stuff, but if you can kind of foster an interest in that, what is it about research that I think works? What do I really think will tell me the truth? That's what makes for a really interesting and scholarly study, and that's what I hope we're all going to be able to achieve as part of this module.